Sounds good. All right. Hi, Brian. Hi.
Been a
Um,
while.
I know. So Brian, I'd like to chat with you about data, and data's importance in performance and physical therapy. So one of the biggest trends we're seeing in the industry, and we're participating fully in that, is how do you use data to inform training programming, physical therapy progressions, etc. Um, we're seeing is a lot of the data and technology that existed at professional and collegiate levels now is much more affordable. It's coming downstream to the average gym, to the average physical therapy clinic, where they can utilize the data. The hard part is that there's still a gap between marrying data to physiological parameters because you've got data and you've got musculoskeletal health. What I find to be really intriguing, especially on the gym side, is that typically when you walk into a gym and you get a trainer who assesses you, the assessment's generally based on some kind of a body comp, and then they give you a plan. But they
Mhm.
don't necessarily have a lot of data on your musculoskeletal health. So as an individual, I've torn ACLs over time, and I've got variances in terms of my ability in left and right hand side. And without knowing all these deviations in somebody's body, they go on and provide you with a typical program. And it seems like in order for an individual to succeed and excel in building their body, you'd have to use data to inform the type of programming you need to do. So, from that perspective, I'm very keen to understand how you're viewing data in the industry, especially from the performance side. Brian, obviously, you work with Training Day, you founded Training Day, and one of the principles you use is that data is the truth in guiding a lot of what you do. I'd love
Mhm.
to have you kind of reflect upon how do you see data being incorporated into gyms right now, and then maybe from that we can lead into how is Training Day hoping to or is using data to progress their athletes.
Yeah, no, it's a great topic. The I guess the way to look at this is there's two ways for you to get an answer at this point in time, right? We're in 2025 with all the accessibility and technology. You have an indirect knowledge, we'll call it indirect, and then there's another side here where you can get direct knowledge and direct truth. So indirect truth and direct truth. And indirect truth would be that example that you explained, that someone going into a gym and maybe they do like a DEXA scan or an in-body, they get some measurements, and then essentially what's going to happen is if they don't have an extensive assessment protocol or a system to put people through, movement patterns, capabilities, strength tests, etc., you're basically at the mercy of the coach to know, or basically putting your evolution in their hands. Now, the coach may be a great coach, someone who has 1 second, I think I just lost back. I think you lost me. I saw a speaker, a notification. I want to make sure we cleared it. But you're at the mercy of that coach, right? So a coach, if they're only using their eyes and they're using their biases, and these can be, it's not a negative at first, right? This isn't negative, it's neutral. But if they're only using their eyes and they're only using their biases, I'm going to call that's indirect truth, right? Where you can go the other side. If you're able to test all these things with data and have a procedure in place to get the direct truth, it takes you out of the picture and it shows you black and white. This is where this person sits. As an example, we brought up like an ACL. I have had 3 ACLs in my history, and I know, and I'm very aware of it, that my right posterior is weaker than my left, and it does have, it causes conflicts when I'm not on top of that. Now, if I were to go into without having technology and data, and I'm doing lower body bending, deadlifting, or something, or even sprinting for that matter, I'm going to run into some issues and potentially some injuries down the road that they may not show up immediately, but they will. Whereas if and that's left to that eye of an indirect, using the eye and the indirect truth. But then if I were to do something like a Sorensen hold or some type of procedure for equipment that allows me to show my hamstring strength, then we can see that left and right imbalance. And again, takes you out of the picture, direct truth, direct knowledge. Now you have that data point to inject that into the training progression and making sure you go back to that test to ensure that there's adaptation.
Yeah, I know for sure. I think you're right. The direct and indirect truth is a very interesting way of looking at it, and I think being able to understand how an individual is progressing as well is a big part of it. I think a lot of data can help sort of instruct a trainer and give them a insight that they probably wouldn't have had. But I think equally as important, perhaps, is also how do you track individuals downstream? How do you track to see how they're doing over time? And it seems to me that's fascinating for both the client and the trainer, because ultimately a trainer wants to retain a client wants to see progress. And it feels that having data as an anchor to those two motivations could really bring a greater level of continuity for a
Mhm.
client and a trainer in a gym setting. Is that kind of how you also see the role of data, not just from a perspective of an evaluation, but also from the perspective of using it as a continuity between two parties and the overall ecosystem of a gym?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately what it does, and this is the most powerful aspect of it, is that it puts it almost puts the responsibility on the client, right? So and also giving them tools. But there's an interesting relationship. You can work with someone as a coach and they could just be the yes sir, the yes man. Like just tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. They don't really think, but they're dedicated, right? So those are great clients to have. They just want to get their goals and they'll do whatever is necessary to get there. If we're looking into different industries and there's definitely like rabbit holes we can go down in certain demographics and business models and gyms and coaching, etc. But then you have kind of this friction that you'll have with clients where they essentially are going to kind of question what you're doing, right? So any coach that listens to this, they're going to be like, oh yeah, like I remember Susie Liu, like that chick just, I like wanted to fire her this whole time, but I needed to pay bills. It's kind of those conversations that happen behind the closed doors. But what happens here is if you have something in the middle, again, it takes us humans out of it and it's saying like, this is what's happening. It puts the responsibility on the coach to design based on that data. And then it also takes the client and shows you like, hey, you're going to have your own biases or you're going to say something's not working or question that something's working when this is clearly telling you this is what's happening. And if the coach can't fulfill on that progression or be able to help that individual, then you can kind of say, well, on the coach's side, like my hands are up. So maybe they want to go work with someone else or vice versa.
Yeah, no, definitely. On the training day side, that's the company that you're building, both online as well as in person.
Mhm.
How are you using data now, and how do you hope to use data more in the months and years coming ahead?
Yeah. So until I would say the last, 20, I mean, technology's been around for a long time in certain areas. For training day, I know going back to my philosophy around what we build everything off of is truth, right? So we have our standardized tests that ultimately are a little bit indirect because there isn't this equipment and technology injected into it. There is still direct. Like if you want to run a 5K time trial, that's a simple test to get some data, right? So we're already using data based on tests, proven tests that, if you go across and look into different sports of like, what's the common denominator of the most potent test you can give someone to get the most insights, right? So example, we have High Rocks test specifically for High Rocks athletes. We have CrossFit tests for CrossFitters. We have the endurance test for runners or anyone that's just looking to kind of make strong, get work on strength, work on Olympic lifting, work on running, etc. Like we have these tests for them to go try these things out, get your scores, and then we take those scores in and we're like, all right, this is where you're going to head. Now, with where technology is getting and advancing, is we're able to take like the things you've said that we're really reserved for like this high level elite sport athlete, right? Professional level. And now we're starting to be able to get this stuff in our hands, like in our pockets on apps and phones and a little bit wearables. So training day, and my goal with this is to become allies with a lot of these companies to not only utilize their functionality and be able to put it into what we do well, but it's also to showcase and expose people to these things. So I think that's the biggest, the biggest gap is there's so much cool shit out there and it's very helpful, but no one knows about them. And it still blows my mind where I'll see something and I'm like, this is so cool. And then I go have a conversation with someone where I'm like, I know they'll know about this and they have no clue. Right. So Shift is a great product that right now, if I go have some conversations, a lot of people don't know about it yet. And but I look at that and go, everyone should know about this. So, with training day, I'm a co-creator and a collaborator. And I want to look at how do you create the best experiences, and we want to find the best products, brands, companies to work with in order to fulfill on those missions.
This segues into some really interesting ideas and topics about trainers and training of trainers.
Mhm.
So the industry as a whole, there's a lot of variability in skill set, and that probably stems from the fact that you can approach training from a multitude of disciplines. You
Mhm.
can be a professionally trained trainer. You could just be a guy who's worked out a lot with great results. There's really no litmus test to bring you into the industry. There's no credentialing that you absolutely have to be a trainer. And this leaves a lot of room for variability in outcomes. So, unfortunately, I think in the industry we're facing now from the trainer perspective is that you have potentially an underappreciation for trainers who
Mhm.
might be really good, and you have trainers who truly are great and not getting compensated for their abilities because they're underneath this umbrella of mediocrity that can exist in some training circles. So ultimately, in order to up level this entire field, you would need to have some kind of a progressive training in place. And I feel like, especially now with technology coming in, and the fact that technology in itself is not complicated to use, but what is complicated is understanding what the data means and how to use that data effectively to take an individual to different progressions of what they're hoping to achieve.
Mhm.
How are you thinking that trainers are getting exposed to technology and more importantly, getting educated on the right technology to use? How do you see this unfolding?
It's a great topic because I have a lot of opinions, or I guess information on this, and I come from that coaching background. There's 15 years of just experiencing what the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, Out of the gates, there's this in the sphere of helping individuals. We'll just call it that. There's this terminology where there's a trainer and a coach, and I actually went through this phase myself, but there's a these things are separate, right? And if you want to look at someone who's been in the game for a long time, they're really gonna call themselves a coach. Usually, novice individuals kind of getting into this profession will only see becoming a trainer, right? And this is very specific to more of just general fitness, right? If you're going to be a track and field coach, you're like, I'm a track and field coach. You're not saying I'm a track and field trainer, right? So just out of the starting gates there's this, it kind of two buckets of people, and the terminology, if you start to speak to that terminology, you're going to find different types of individuals in that space, okay, and different level of capacities. I'm not going to say they're better or worse, but um as far as the standard, or this entry into the field, the separation is we're still learning from old models. So if you go get certified in any of these spaces, this is it's the echo chamber of the past. And I do believe that this is that thing back to the biases. And it's not direct truth, it's indirect truth, and it's experimentation, which is all beautiful because magic comes out of those laps. But now we have all of this cool stuff sitting here now, and in the future it's only going to get better, to where if you were to bring this under one umbrella and expose an entire industry of coaches to them or to it, this is where the entire field can change. It's we've had conversations of this in the past. It's kind of breaking down the walls between all these professions, right? So from physical therapy, from strength and conditioning, from having to go from a rehab to going into rebuilding, going into performance. Like there's all these stages where you have to kind of hop around. We can put nutrition in there. And I think with technology, we can really bring this under one house, and the individual in these different spaces can now have multiple skill sets to be able to help someone from start to finish and not have to keep handing off the baton to others. And so I really do see that's where we can take it as an industry for coaches. We can take this technology and get exposed to so many more different avenues and really look at, and I would say unfold the human being and be able to take what we have with technology and then from there get creative and say, okay, well, let's take human potential from here to here. And how do we do that as an industry?
So from an industry perspective, you're right. It's about taking individuals from a certain baseline to a new baseline.
Hmm.
How do you think the industry can solve this situation? Because there, like, if you were to enter the physical therapy industry and want to be a physical therapist, there's a proper pathway. You go to school, you get your doctor of physical therapy, then go practice physical therapy. And from a client perspective or from a customer perspective, when somebody has that degree, you can have a certain level of surety that they have a certain level of skill sets that can help you get to your intended outcome.
Hmm.
Um, in the case of the entire coaching training industry, there really isn't that. So how do you kind of propose that be solved? So when I go to the gym and I see a trainer, if I'm going to, let's say, an Equinox or a Life Fitness, they have different grades of trainers, and supposedly, quote unquote, that gives you some relevancy in terms of how good you might be. But
Hmm.
you're still not sure about, do they understand data? Do they understand different things that they need to understand? From my perspective, I feel like there needs to be some kind of a training in place for every single coach or trainer at the bare minimum to get them to a certain level that
Hmm.
everyone can say, no matter what level they are, whatever gym they are, that they come equipped with this knowledge. Do you think we can progress towards that, or is that being too ambitious?
No, absolutely. I think you can progress towards it. And I think that question is being answered. I think there are companies out there, and I'm sure if we dug, deep enough, we could find them or and educators and ways to to find that solution and evolution of things. But I look at this like a decentralized conversation, right? So let's just take it for we're gonna have to put a couple things here on the shelf with like, all right, if you're gonna be a surgeon, that's like you got to go be a surgeon, right? If you're, I'm trying to think of like if you're gonna go work on airplanes, all right, go strictly that route, right? But when we're getting into health, wellness, and fitness, I mean, like you just put everything into this ball. It's really its roots are very were very unregulated, right? And not saying that regulation. I do not want to put rules on this. I think the rules would probably be the worst thing to do. But I want to say it's like not regulated. It's like the wild wild west, right? So you have all these people that they're putting their philosophies out there. There's systems of like this is how we train people. Well, it's like all right, well this other company's like this is how we train people. And again, if we were just to get back down to like a neutral state and decentralize all this professionalism and degrees and all of this and look at it, go, if you were to try to help a person, like truly help them and change their lives, you are going to need to know a certain baseline of knowledge in all of these areas, right? Like an example, you take like a doc, this is where a broken system, this is something where fitness trainers and coaches are kind of the soldiers on the ground on the forefront of health and wellness, actual true health, right? Where you have a doctor who most people are going to go to when they run into issues, they're sick, right? They're trying to get better, they're trying to get fixed or fix something, and you have that individual that was never taught anything in school about nutrition, right? So right there, that's just something I look at and I'm like, that's stupid. Like I think that's dumb because I need to that person should know at least something in that space to go, hey, instead of putting you on a prescription or going through the procedures of checking boxes, based on what you told me, I think you just need to go change your diet. And it's like, great, thank you. Now I'm going to go take those steps, right? One off example, but I think that's where it sits. I think that you can take a holistic doctor, take a physical therapist, take a strength and conditioning coach. You can take someone that's like just really dived into biology, right, and human optimization from nutrition level, and maybe even supplementation. Take them and put them all in the room and be like, all right, you guys need to come up with a curriculum for someone who's not been conditioned in certain silos and they want to help people and they want to help people in the future. And we got to put technology in there too, right? So that's this room. You guys have, you have a month work on this, build out the curriculum, working together and take all of your fields and build this puzzle. And that to me, if I saw that, I'm going to grab onto that. And this is my perspective of being in the space and having a certain lens my own personal lens, but that's what I see needs to happen in the future.
So you almost see the trainers being a linchpin for multiple specialties coming together and providing that input so that at the end of the day, when somebody comes in for a health and fitness initiative, that's usually self-driven.
Mhm.
You have to drive yourself to a certain place or make space for it. It's a lot of initiative from the individual perspective. And so that trainer is at a very interesting junction of that person's life, in that you're coming to a person seeking help to get better. You're making the time initiative to do that. And so if that individual has the ability to bring together a multitude of different disciplines in an easy way to do, easy manner, that ultimately would serve as sort of the new quote unquote health check. We
Mhm.
always talk about staying healthy. There's this term longevity, which is a bit of a glorified term, and it's a bit mystical in some ways, but ultimately you want to be able to lead a healthy life. And
Mhm.
usually healthy lives come from eating well and moving and lifting. That's the basic cornerstones, right? And
Mhm.
so if your trainer can bring together various aspects from a nutrition perspective, from a technology perspective, from a different perspective that you just talked about, that's really how you transform the gym into the health center. I think there's been a lot of conversations about the gym being the third place in the health center. Ultimately, there's a mental component to being in a gym, and having it as a third place is the very healthy thing to do, because what better thing to do than have a third place be a gym where you're probably more likely to move and lift than anywhere else. But also I think it's really important that the individuals you interact with have the skill sets to allow you to get and progress yourself in that third place to become a healthier individual of yourself or a better version of yourself.
Mhm. No, I completely agree. It's that third space conversation. You can see it in I guess in the US market, you're seeing this division of or I want to say division, but this new arena starting to happen. And it's kind of like this premium wellness, right? Where you have a lot of wellness companies that are popping up and they're utilizing this technology to build out, we have 6,000 biomarkers that are going to give you all the tools, and we're going to have a self-care routine for you to optimize these biomarkers. Beautiful. There's still a gap, right? Or if you have a gym, a premium space and offering, whatever premium memberships, and it's all focused on the training. Well, where's all this wellness data, right? So I think that third space and being able to bring it all together is like, I guess we'll put it this way: is there's gonna there's value in all of it. The value is all equal, right? It's all beneficial. But then you're going to run to a point where there's a ceiling, and that ceiling is going to need to be broken. So if a company starts out of is just super ultra um, niche in the wellness mindset, eventually they're going to have to do this, and they're going to have to open up a door, and they're going to have to start embracing these other areas and facets of being a person and a human. And so that's ultimately like a big solution, not only the an educational side for an industry of coaching, but this third space concept. There nothing else that exists, right? Right now we look at this and be like, I want to have all the things we're talking about. I want to go to this one place and I want it all taken care of. And I want to learn and I want to understand my body. I want to get better at these things. And I want to have a super team that is all interconnected and communicating and working in synergy for me. And if you try to find that, you find these gaps. Oh, I got to go get blood work over here, and I'm going to go take it to Bob, my coach, who actually doesn't know how to read blood work. So I got to go take it to a nutritionist, and they don't know Bob, and it's just this chaos, right? You're actually spending the whole day driving around to all the people that are going to say, "Hey, you need to go to this other person." So I think it solves a lot of confusion for everybody, not just a coach, but humanity, like less confusion. Just we need models in place for us to go in and go, oh man, I spent 10 years trying to overcomplicate, chewing my food and eating whatever meat and veggies, right? So
That's very true. I'm glad you have humanity in your vision. That's great.
yeah, it's
Let's help everybody.
yeah, and it's we can laugh about it because it's like it's true, right? The things we have to do and the hoops we got to jump through to get answers,
Yeah.
just But at the same time, it's very tragic, so like a perspective for me, I'm 34, turning on 35, and I'm witnessing the older generations, right, where they don't have access to 1/8 of what we have access to, maybe less, right, 0.5%, where right today everything's for the taking. Like, we have so many answers that the older generations could have benefited from, right, and really could have stopped epidemics from obesity, right, from diseases, and all these things. That's just a laundry list that massive industries have been built upon. We could essentially make those go away because we wouldn't have to rely on them to find health and happiness. And we're here now today. We have it all. It's just now we're in the where we have it all, but then we have, when what comes with that is that now we have an influx of too much information. So now we have no answers. Like, all the answers are there, but they're scattered on this web of chaos on the internet. And you're not, whatever your news channel, right? Whatever your information diet is, that's how you're going to form your reality. So I think that if there's things that can pierce through all the noise, and I love using the word truth, because when someone is speaking their truth, whether you have this awareness of your skill set, it hits home, and it sticks with you. And I think that's just being a human, our own technology. Like, our voice is so powerful that I could say something to you, or someone could hear this, at home and listening to this, and something of truth will hit them, and it's going to sit there and it's going to bounce around, and it may completely change the trajectory they were on because it was truth, and we all resonate with truth. So at the ultimate, like, my purpose is, I seek that every day, and I seek that in different levels in different areas, but I know truth from the untruth, and I use that as a beacon. And that's my truth now, is to look at what's things, and it's very broken. And I try not to look at things in a dystopic way. I'm very optimistic, and I like the light of everything, so I go towards the light. Stay from the dark, go towards the light. But yeah, like, that's just how I see things now. So
Gotcha. Wow, that was a long, winding, interesting conversation, Brian. I'm sure we'll have many more of these, but this has been fun. I appreciate the time, and I'm sure we'll circle back on many of these topics in more detail. We have a lot of rabbit holes to uncover still.
absolutely, on to the next.
All right, sounds great.